I never imagined that becoming a stepmother would lead me to moments like these. When I married Mark's father, I knew it wouldn't be easy, especially for Mark. It had been only a short time since he lost his mother, and the last thing I wanted was to step into a role that felt so unnatural for him. Mark closed himself off, retreating to his room as if the walls had become his prison. I occasionally tried knocking on his door to offer snacks or invite him to dinner, but he turned me down every time. A sadness washed over me. I was here to build a new family, yet it felt like I was intruding on his grief. Then everything changed one stormy night. The power went out, plunging the house into darkness. I could hear my little daughter Emma sobbing in the living room. I did my best to comfort her, but I could feel how scared the storm had made her. Just then, I heard a voice from the hallway. "Mark," I called out. "Come, let's wait together here." To my surprise, he came to my side. We lit some candles, and I began to share stories from my childhood, filled with laughter and adventures. Seeing the light in Mark's eyes, I felt a bond starting to grow between us, unexpectedly. We shared our fears and dreams, and slowly the walls Mark had built around himself began to crumble. While the storm raged outside, I sensed something changing within me. Mark was no longer just my stepson. He was a young man mourning his loss, and in that moment, I wanted to be a source of comfort for him. But this bond brought complexities as well. I began to notice the way Mark looked at me, the lingering glances, the way he smiled at my jokes, and how our conversations started to carry a weight I wasn't prepared for. I tried to push these thoughts aside, telling myself it was just a connection formed from the shared wounds we carried. One evening, as Mark slept on the couch, I sat nearby in an armchair. I watched him. A mixture of love and concern weighed heavily in my heart. He looked so peaceful that I felt an overwhelming urge to protect that innocence, yet the longer I watched, the more complicated my feelings became. As days passed, the tension between Mark and me intensified. I had to bear the weight of this bond we were forming in addition to being his stepmother. Every shared laugh, every long gaze made me question all my beliefs about boundaries. One evening, I saw Mark sitting on the terrace. My heart felt like it was shattering. I sat down beside him, and a spark of electricity filled the air. As we chatted about mundane things, I softly asked, "Have you ever thought about starting anew?" He turned to me seriously, saying, "Sometimes it's hard to know what moving forward means." The vulnerability in his voice resonated deeply within me. Sharing my own struggles, I explained how difficult it was to fill the void left by my late husband. It was a raw moment, and I felt our bond deepening even further. "Mark, I need to tell you something. I feel like there's a different connection between us." "It scares me, but it's real," I said. Surprise flickered in his eyes. "I feel it too," he said, his voice trembling like a whisper. "But it's so complicated." "Absolutely, I don't want to hurt anyone, at least not you," I replied, my heart racing, but I couldn't deny how much I cared for him. Our conversation was abruptly interrupted by a rumble of thunder, startling us both. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil inside us. As we sat in silence, the weight of our feelings hung in the air. Just then, Emma appeared at the door, her small figure illuminated in the light. "Mom, Mark, come inside, it's getting dark," she said. Her innocence shattered our moment, and as we returned inside, I felt that everything had changed irreversibly. After that night, everything was different. The unspoken emotions in the air had intensified. I noticed Mark catching my gaze at dinner, feeling a warmth inside me that sent shivers down my spine whenever he smiled at my jokes. It was both thrilling and terrifying, and I knew we were walking a fine line. One afternoon, while preparing dinner in the kitchen, I saw Mark sitting next to me, focused on a school project. The aroma of spices filled the air as I chopped vegetables, sneaking glances at him. He was so engrossed, and the love inside me surged. "Do you need help?" he asked, pulling me from my thoughts. "I'm just chopping veggies," I replied, handing him a knife. As we cooked side by side, our laughter mingled with the warmth of the moment, but every brush of our shoulders sent static shocks through me. My heart raced. As the storm raged outside, my happiness at being with Mark grew within me. After dinner, we settled in the living room to watch a movie. Emma curled up between us. I felt Mark beside me, and every shared laugh carried significant weight. The flickering light of the screen illuminated his features, and the confusion and longing in his eyes became more pronounced. Halfway through the film, Mark leaned in closer, our shoulders touching. My breath caught, our eyes met, and I felt a pull toward him. In that instant, a flash of lightning lit up the room, and Mark turned to me. The mix of excitement and uncertainty on his face captivated me. "Can we talk?" he whispered, his voice low. I nodded, my heart racing. We stepped outside onto the porch, the cool evening air enveloped us, and my excitement grew. "I can't ignore my feelings anymore," he said. I felt a thrill at this confession, but we had to be cautious, I replied. "This can't affect Emma or your dad." He looked down, battling with the weight of the situation. "Maybe this connection is something that can help us both heal." A knot formed in my stomach. It could be, but we have to be careful. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I care about you, but we need to define what this means," I said. At that moment, Emma's voice called out from inside, urging us to come back. The magic of the moment faded, and I felt a pang of regret as I saw Mark step away. Everything we had experienced was filled with laughter, awkward silences, and stolen glances as the days rolled on. The weight of my feelings for Mark grew heavier with each passing day. One evening, I decided to prepare for a night out with him. I felt comfortable in the dress I chose, but an undercurrent of tension lingered within me. As we sat across from each other at the dinner table, I found myself losing myself in the depths of Mark's eyes. While Emma sat at one end of the table coloring, Mark and I continued to chat. Our smiles danced between us, mingling with the quiet moments. For a brief second, my hand brushed against his. In that moment, the tension inside me released. "Tonight feels different," I said, as Mark's focus drew me in. "I know," he replied, "something has changed." When our eyes locked that night, we paused, realizing how deeply we felt for each other, the connection between us becoming undeniable. But I knew I had to stop myself. This was a complex situation for both of us, and a wrong move could ruin everything. "You know, this night means a lot to me," I said, trying to smile. "Let's create a memory of Emma's favorite evening." A smile spread across Mark's face, but I could see the conflict within him. "Yeah, but this isn't just a fairy tale," he said. A sense of uncertainty bloomed within me. "Absolutely," I replied, but I was afraid to dive deeper. Ultimately, I had to confront the reality that everything could change. Knowing that one day this would become a memory, I kept my place next to Mark, but I couldn't predict where the turmoil inside me was leading. When I heard Emma had gone to bed, my anxieties grew even more. Mark and I were alone, and I thought I'd have to voice the feelings stirring within me. "Mark, how do we manage this?" I asked, my heart racing. The uncertainty and fragility in his eyes alarmed me. "I don't know, but it's important to me," he said. As we drew closer, I said, "We have to give it a chance, but it will always be complicated." We were caught between fear and hope. Just then, sounds from Emma's room shattered our moment. I needed to find an answer to the feelings in my heart, but the turbulence brought by the storm outside made the reality I had to face even clearer. I know Mark carries similar complexities in his heart, but this is significant not just for me, but for him too. Love was a sweet agony. It bore both deep connection and uncertainty. The step we were about to take toward each other could change our lives forever, and that was both frightening and exhilarating. Lost in uncertainty about the future, I know we can write a story filled with love and connection. But I also know we must tread carefully with each step. While carrying the traces of our pasts, we can never know what the future will bring.